One of the first big letters, big exhortations, which Pope Francis wrote to the world was not very long after he became Pope. And the document, the letter to the world, is on the proclamation of the gospel in today's world, Evangelii Gaudium. And when we look at that document, we could see it as a sort of a manifesto, if you like, of Pope Francis's pontificate. We can see those priority pointers which he considers, which he's drawn to the foreground of our consciousness. That we are all missionary disciples, something I'm sure we've heard that phrase bandied around a lot. We're all missionary disciples. That all of us are to reach out, to go beyond the comfortable places where we are, those comfort zones of ours, the familiar, to the peripheries of our society. And again, isn't periphery another key word of Pope Francis's pontificate? To go to those peripheries of our society, of our community, in order to radiate the light of the gospel. That the proclamation of the gospel is to be spirit-filled, stemming from a personal encounter with the love of Jesus. He brings all of these things, draws them all to the foreground. In this great letter to the world, in this exhortation, Pope Francis says that it's up to all of us together, whether we're ordained or lay or religious, to make present the fragrance of Christ's closeness and his personal gaze. Isn't that such a wonderful phrase, which I have nicked from Pope Francis? To make present the fragrance of Christ's closeness and his personal gaze. And I think that's such a powerful image for us to dwell on and to begin to unpack. This invitation to make present the fragrance of Christ's closeness and his personal gaze is nothing less than, from the Holy Father, an invitation to personal growth, an invitation to growth in the life of the Spirit, growth to truly becoming those missionary disciples which he so eloquently speaks about time and again. Over the next few weeks, this is what I'd invite us all to consider doing. To join with me to begin a journey of accompaniment, looking to make present the fragrance of Christ in our lives. Because if Christ is not made present in our lives, we cannot shine it forth into the community. As with any time of spiritual accompaniment, this time of making present the fragrance of Christ is a time of growth, a time of personal intimacy and closeness, perhaps a time of liberation from sin and growth in the Christian life. Our gospel readings over these next few weeks that lead us up to the great feast of Christ the King will help us to unpack the how question. How do we go about making present the fragrance of Christ in our life? These gospel readings over these next few weeks provide us with key components that help us on our journey. Service, healing, the call to holiness, generosity, important components which we have the opportunity to reflect on for our own spiritual growth. Today's gospel prompts us to reflect upon the nature of our service within discipleship. What is it? And what are the foundations and the motivations which help us to bring about our service in the community, in the parish community, the local community. If we think about perhaps just for a moment providing a sort of a framework to help us to understand this, we could begin perhaps with looking at the devil, ironically, as a model of service. We could look at his motto, if he had a motto. I'm sure he doesn't, but if he did, I'm sure that his motto would be something of the total antithesis to what Christian service is all about. Non serviam. I will not serve. In other words, it's all about what I want, what I say or what I do, like it or lump it. Such an attitude to Christian service will always be something which will rip apart the heart of any community, and isn't what the devil seeks to do and what he does so very well. Divides and conquers. We could, to help us with this framework of what Christian service is, we could look to James and John in our own gospel reading today, with their own self-interest and ambition very much at the forefront of the querying and the requesting which they make to the Lord. In some ways, we can see, well, what James and John ask is perfectly normal, to seek approval for the things that they've done, or to get rewarded perhaps in some worldly way. And yet, if this is what service is only about, then there is still something that's missing, isn't there? Still something that's lacking. The true meaning of Christian service, then, our Lord draws out through those two disciples. The true meaning of Christian service, our mission as co-heirs of the kingdom, our ability then to outreach into the community, into the world, means to go beyond ourselves, to care for the needs of others, to actively reach out to those who are in need, and not with that thought of our own worldly ambition. What can we get out of this? True greatness is not measured in those places of honor at the left hand or the right hand of the Father, but by stretching out our hand when we know that the other person could never ever reciprocate, could never give back anything in return. Our Sunday obligation here this morning isn't truly fulfilled simply by coming to Mass and ticking off the box, but by the way in which the nourishment which we receive here at the altar is transformed and transforms the very service itself which we have to offer from our gifts and from our talents. I'd like to end by quoting Pope Francis, who said this just last month. He says, "The value of a person no longer depends on the role they have, the work they do, the money they have in the bank. No, it does not depend on this. Greatness and success in God's eyes are measured differently. They are measured by service, not on what someone has, but on what someone gives."